Hi everyone, and again, I'm really sorry for the quality of the video of the camera. Uh, I'll tell you what, I've had a horrible week, okay? Really, really horrible. So, again, the microphone, which I'm using it from my headset, is telling me that you can hear me, so I'm hoping you can. This is the only one I have got left. That's why I'm saying I've had a horrible week. My camera stopped working, my HDMI cable stopped working. My audio jack stopped working, my microphone jack stopped working, and it's not even the end of the week yet. And yeah, and my computer is giving me a lot of issues lately. And also, hey JD, thanks for joining. I'm glad, at least hearing, if not seeing properly, because the quality is horrendous. To top it off, I told you in the last live that I had an appointment today, right? So I went this morning to the hospital. I checked into reception. I went in the waiting room. I spent 1 hour waiting there to be seen for my appointment. After 1 hour, to be told that my appointment got cancelled and the whole clinic actually got cancelled for today. Hi, Red. I thank you for joining. Yeah, it's a really late one. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't expect to do a live today, and then in the last minute, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do it because yeah, it just happened. So yeah, after waiting for an hour there like an idiot with my extreme anxiety, I even had to ask my husband to leave work so he can drop me off and then stay with me at the hospital because I can't go out on my own, especially when I have to go to the hospital. And yeah, just to be told that your appointment was canceled. This appointment was booked a few months in advance, maybe more than half a year in advance. And not once have I received a letter, a message, a phone call, an email, anything like that to say that the appointment was canceled. And so I got really upset. And I came home and I just slept the whole day. That's why you can see my hair as it is because I just woke up at 8:30 this evening. So that's the reason for this late life. Because I'm still trying to decide, am I going to do it? Am I not going to do it? And so on. So anyway, we are left at chapter 21. I need to start reading chapter 21 of Gonzalo Amaral's book. So I think I can get started. Yep. Let me put this on the screen. Ah, there it is. Okay. Oh, I forgot to go to that chapter. Oh, great. It's always something. Chapter. Where is the chapter? You can tell that I'm so rubbish at this. It's like in every life there is some kind of an issue. Uh, 18, 19, yeah, 20, 21. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay. Finally. Finally, right? Is it on your screen? Yes, it is. Hi, Bernadette. Thank you for joining. Please don't say good night. Just good evening or good night. Yeah, yeah, I know. I know. I'm on the late shift. I'm on the night shift. Okay, let's get started. Chapter 21. Why Jane Tanner's testimony was suppressed. As we have seen, the revelation of the mystery man was essential and convenient to the abduction thesis, the only line of inquiry pursued by the British police, but not only for the reasons invoked above. There is a main reason for such a revelation. To understand the main reason that led the police to make such an unreasonable disclosure, we have to compare what Jane Tanner and the Smith family witnessed. Let us recall that there is an interval of several days between the first statements of these witnesses, and that only after the family of Martin Smith recognized the father of the missing child as the man with the child on his lap, seen at 10:05 p.m. on 3rd of May 2007 at Rua da Escola Primaria in Praia da Luz, did Jane Tanner refine her statement and even collaborate on a full portrait of the man she had seen at 9:15 p.m. With the help of Paolo Sargento, a forensic psychologist, a comparative picture of these testimonies, namely about the man and the girl, I assume, was constructed. Okay, so it's giving us here some details, description of the suspect in 2007, Jane Tanner, friend of the child's parents, Martin Smith, Irish family, the father, Iofi Smith, Irish family, the daughter, Peter Smith, Irish family, the son. Attitude, hasty, didn't look like tourist, didn't look like a tourist. Normal, walked normally at a somewhat brisk pace. Hair, thick, very dark hair, short but long down to the neck. Brown hair, short, with a normal masculine cut. Thick, light brown hair, a little longer on top. Physical build, slim, excuse me, 5 feet 7 inches tall, normal build, more slender, 5 feet 10 inches tall, 5 feet 10 inches tall, normal, 1.70, 1.75 meters in height, normal in good shape, 1.75, 1.8 meters tall. Okay, before we move on, so that you guys don't get confused, I think I figured out what are with the lines here. So you see here, it's giving the names of the witnesses in this order. So I assume that the description is in the same order from the from each of the witnesses. Okay, face. Could not describe details. 35 or 40 years old. No beard or mustache, no glasses. 30 or 35 years old. Smooth face, no beard, and fair skin. 25, 35 years old. Unshaven, skin lightly tanned by the sun. 35 years and older. Dress. Linen trousers, beige to gold in color. Duffy coat, thinner, black and classic shoes. Cream beige trousers. Plain trousers, straight down the legs, light beige, in a cotton type fabric thicker than linen. Can't remember. What have you done? Carry the child, or what has this suspect done? Carry the child lying on both arms in front of his chest. So basically describing carrying the child like this, which is very unusual when you are carrying a child. And I think that the first witness is Jane Tanner's testimony. Yeah. So he carried the child lying on both arms in front of his chest. So basically, she's saying that he was carrying the child like this. So then my question is, how can you carry a child like this and walk for so long with a child like this? This is not even a normal position where you would be taking a child, let's say, from point A to point B. It's not, because it's not comfortable at all, is it? It doesn't make sense. Hi, Rosemary. Thank you for joining. Then the other witness is saying, carrying the child in her arms or in his arms with her head resting on her left shoulder, on his left shoulder. Now, this makes much more sense, the position of the child. The second witness is Martin Smith. Yeah. So what Martin Smith is saying, he kind of makes much more sense than what Jane Tanner is saying. So, according to Martin Smith, the man was carrying the child in his arms with the child's head resting on his left shoulder, which makes more sense because that's how you would usually carry a child if, let's say, the child would be sleeping whilst you are walking, going from point A to point B. I don't think I've ever seen anyone carrying a child like this, the way that Jane Tanner describes it. And then the other witness is saying that he was walking with a child in his arms. Again, this makes sense. The next one is saying he carried the child in his arms with his head against his left shoulder, with her head against his left shoulder, leaning on the left shoulder. So if you have a look at the Smith family, the description, all of them are very, what's the word? All of them are very similar to each other. The only one which doesn't make sense is the one from Jane Tanner. the carrying of the child with both arms in front of his chest. Whereas the Smith family is saying that the child was in his arms, which makes sense. The head was resting, which again makes sense. And they are very specific even about the which shoulder it was. It was his left shoulder. And all of them are saying the same, except of course from Jane Tanner. In which direction were they moving? West-east direction, north of the Ocean Club. This is what Jane Tanner is saying. The Smith family is saying north-south direction, south of the Ocean Club, north-south direction, south of the Ocean Club, north-south direction, south of the Ocean Club. And again, you can see a clear discrepancy in this sighting. Jane Tanner is saying that the man was traveling in the west-east direction, whereas the whole of the Smith family is saying that the man was traveling in the north-south direction. It's like on the opposing end, isn't it? Which again, it would make sense if all of the witnesses would be telling the truth. And my assumption is that the odd one out is Jane Tanner. The time, again, we see a huge difference in the time of the sighting. So Jane Tanner is saying it was 9:15. The Smith family, all of them are saying it was 10 o'clock. Summary of agreement: Subject, apparently not a tourist, was carrying a child in his arms at a slightly hurried pace. Of normal physical build, more towards thinness, of average height, between 170 and 180 meters. His hair is normally cut, perhaps a little longer on top, dark and thick. He wears light-colored beige polo-style trousers, cotton or linen. Summary of what is discordant: Time and place: There is a difference of 45 minutes between sightings and about 350 meters apart with opposite directions. Conclusion: High probability of being the same subject cited by independent witnesses at slightly different times and locations, consistent with pedestrian movement within the village of light radius. Description of the child in 2007. Jane Tanner, the friend of the missing child's parents. Then we've got Martin Smith, Iofil Smith, and Peter Smith. Physical build and posture. So Gentile is saying that the child was larger than a baby and appeared to be sleeping. The Smith family, they are saying normal, about 4 years old, about 1 meter tall, and appeared to be sleeping. About 4 years old female appeared to be sleeping with arms suspended across the wearer's body. About 2, 3 years old female, normal complexion. Again, their description makes so much more sense than Jane Tanner's. And the reason why I'm saying that this Jane Tanner's description is very vague and it lacks a lot of detail, like just larger than a baby and he appeared to be sleeping. Whereas you've got the Smith family and they are saying that the child was normal looking, like 4 years old or 2 or 3 years old, about 1 meter tall, who appear to be sleeping. They give a very detailed description of what they've seen, which makes me believe that their description is much more credible than Jane Tanner's description. And what I find interesting is one of the Smith family saying that the child appeared to be sleeping with the arms suspended across the man's body, the wearer's body. So again, let's not say that Madeleine, it was, let's not say that it was Madeleine, and let's not say that it was that child. But arms suspended across the wearer's body, it's kind of uh, sinister, like if you would imagine it, like, I don't know, arms suspended across the wearer's body. I mean, you can also say that the child, when they are sleeping, they are in a very deep sleep, and maybe, they just have their arms suspended. But I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think that when my children were little and one of them would fall asleep in my arms, I mean, they would have their arms suspended perhaps, but if I would be moving around, they would be like shifting their position, maybe. Face and hair. So again, Jay Tanner didn't describe the face and the hair, but then we've got the Smith family. They are saying white skin, medium blonde hair, long, straight golden hair down to the nape of the neck, medium length blonde hair. Clothing. Light colored cotton pajamas, white or pink, possibly with flower pattern, barefoot and not wrapped in a blanket or blanket. Control risks said it was the distinctive pink pajamas. Then this is the description from Jane Tanner. Then the description from the Smiths, light colored pajamas and not covered with any blankets or blankets. Light color, white or light pink trousers, which may be pajamas and light long sleeved blouse, no blanket or overlay. Light summer clothing, light color, don't remember to cover up. Now, again, if you have a look at this description, in particular of the clothing, it's very, very strange. And I'm talking about Jane Tanner's description. When she was describing the hair of the child, she was very vague and the way that the child looked. And as a contrast here, when it comes to clothing, she is very descriptive, almost too descriptive in comparison with everything else that she said before. And again, there's the timing there, 9:15, 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock, which is a huge difference there in timing. Summary of what has been agreed. Girl, female, between 2 and 4 years old, fair skinned, with blonde hair, not too light, wearing probably light colored pajamas, possibly pink, who appears to be sleeping in the arms of the man carrying her uncovered. In early May, between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. The data point to a biotype concordant with that of the child who mysteriously disappeared. Summary of what is discordant. Time and place. Compatible with pedestrian movements within the radius of Aldea da Luz. The conclusion of this comparative analysis between the statements of Jane Tanner and the family of Martin Smith is simple. There is an enormous probability that the man and the child were the same at each sighting. The child could be Maddie. Jane Tanner's testimony points to this being the child. On the other hand, Martin Smith has come to recognize the man and the girl as the missing father and daughter. I believe in two things: the place, time, and direction in which the man was walking are intentionally wrong. The witness, Jeremy, came to see Jane Tanner dressed in purple outside her flat, smoking in the main front hallway of the block of flats, and it was from there that he saw the man with the child on his lap. In fact, this is what he told the manager of the Ocean Club the same night of the disappearance. The time it happened is around 10 o'clock, and the address was the access to Rua da Escola Primaria. All this leads us to think that Jane Tanner knows more than she said. Perhaps she suspects or knows who this man was. The main reason for the deletion of her statement by the British police is related to this fact, hence the need for the revelation of the mystery man 6 years after the event. It's a good attempt to eliminate possible responsibility and support the wild theory of the abduction, but it does not succeed, as it wants to mislead the unwary into believing that the abductor is someone similar to the father of the missing child. Chapter 22: Planned Disappearance Alert. I have written and said it before. All hypotheses related to the disappearance of the British child must be addressed and investigated. There is talk of an abduction, planned or not, with sexual motives, by a PDF of a false report of abduction, of an accidental death inside the flat inhabited by the child, of the possible responsibility of those who had the duty to look after her safety, and of a voluntary departure of the child. The contradictions, inconsistencies, and lies of family and friends seem to denote the existence of a joint plan to hide what really happened. But what are they hiding? What happened to the missing child and when? Over the last few years, a group of people interested in finding out the truth, mostly of British origin from various professions, including lawyers and police, have been trying to answer this question. One of them is Peter. Simply Peter, a retired former superintendent of the British Police who does not accept the scenario presented by his parents and friends, and with whom I have spoken over the years. I have read and reread the content of the work of this group of researchers. It seems to me to be a well-crafted analysis, and one cannot rule out the possibility that the judicial police have been tricked and led up an alley. But as we shall see, this theory must be considered in the ongoing investigation. Do we know this Peter? Which Peter is he referring to? Is he? Hmm, I don't know. I don't know who is this Peter. One of the starting points of the analysis carried out by this group is the photograph of the father with the missing child and his son shown by the Ocean Club pool. The parent spokesperson would have us believe that this photo was taken on 3rd of May 2007. This photo is not in the criminal case file, but was published in a newspaper sometime after the disappearance. At the time, we got the idea that the photo was staged. The shadow, the shadow of the father does not correspond to that of his children, and so with this photo, the idea was created that he was a good father who accompanied his children to the swimming pool. The group, which questions the scenario created, subjected the photograph to a scientific analysis and concluded that the record shown in it on 3rd of May does not correspond to the truth. In addition to the analysis of the photograph, they analyzed the weather and cloud cover at Praia da Luz using satellite images. It was concluded that the photograph could only have been taken on Sunday, 29th of April. The photograph was proof that the child was alive on 29th of April, and for this group of investigators, there is no other credible document or testimony to confirm the fact that the child did not die on that date. From 29th of April until 3rd of May, the child was not seen again, despite the records of entries and exits at the nursery. This is the opinion of the investigators, but there are witness statements claiming to have seen the child after 29th of April. In addition, according to this group of investigators, there is the fact that from that day, 29th of April, the parents of the missing child adopted strange behavior, not wanting to be seen as a family of four, leaving the flat through different doors, keeping the blinds closed in the children's room, having breakfast in their own flat, not meeting the rest of the holiday group during the day, sleeping in separate beds after an argument between the two. The missing child missed going to the beach with the children of the parents' friends. After an exhaustive work of collecting and analyzing information, this group of investigators produced a detailed document with their doubts and forwarded the conclusion to the State Attorney General on 28th of February 2018. It concludes that Madeleine Mccann did not die on the night of Thursday, 3rd of May, but between Sunday afternoon, 29th of April, and Monday afternoon, 30th of April. Part of the investigator's analysis focuses on the strange coincidence between the description of a man with a child on his lap, given by witness Jane Tanner, and the man who, on the afternoon of 29th of April, had been photographic Nuno's daughter, a 4-year-old girl with blonde hair and blue eyes who looked very similar to Madeleine. The panel concluded that the testimonies of Nuno and Jane Tanner were fabricated and that the similarity between the two descriptions represents a strong likelihood that both were planned long before Thursday, 3rd of May 2007, and that there had been collusion between the two witnesses to create the false idea of the existence of an abductor. Although Nuno claims that his daughter was the subject of an attempted abduction on 29th of April, he only contacted the police authorities, in this case the Policia Judiciaria, on 5th of May. Despite being in possession of key elements for the location and identification of the alleged kidnapper, it seems that she preferred to contact the police only after the suspect's departure from Portugal and after Jane Tanner's statement. If we compare the descriptions of Jane Tanner about the man she would have seen and Nuno about the man who would have tried to abduct her daughter, the similarities are striking if we look at the following table of references. Description of Jane Tanner, then description of Nuno. 35 to 40 years old. 40 years old. Dark brown hair falling down to the neck. Brown hair down to the neck. Wore cream or beige trousers. Wore cream colored trousers. Wore black classic style shoes. Wore black shoes in a classic style. He was wearing warm clothes, so he thought he was not a tourist. He did not appear to be a tourist. For the investigation, okay, before I carry on, I need to say something on this. It's so obvious, in my opinion, that these two statements are rehearsed and they are pre-planned, as in, yeah, they were talking to each other, in my opinion, before they gave these statements, and they kind of agreed on what both of them to say. So I kind of feel like I agree with the conclusion of the investigators here from the UK who sent the letter to their conclusion actually to the Polizia Judiciaria. Did you guys hear about this before? Hey, CHB. Okay, JD is saying, I think Jane Tanner saying the child was completely made up to make it look like an abduction. And Smith man was Jerry Mccann, in my opinion. She is saying, was Peter the guy who lives in Spain, a retired police detective from Nottingham? I'm not sure if he's referring to Peter who lives in Spain, but from what I've just read, he's saying that he was a retired investigator. So it might be the same person. I am not sure. Actually, Peter might be someone who stayed under the radar, and that's why Gonzalo doesn't ID him. It's possible. It's very much possible, and also it's also possible that perhaps Peter is not his real name. It might just be a name that Gonzalo just put in the book as a reference, or so you can understand better. Let me carry on. For the investigators defending the girl's death between 29th of April and the afternoon of 30th of April, there is no credible, independent testimony from anyone who saw Madeleine after Sunday, 29th of April. One of the questions I asked Peter, the retired British police superintendent, concerned the time of the missing persons alert, 10:05 p.m. on 3rd of May 2007. Was the child's body taken from the flat on that day or at an earlier date and time? This question was related to the sighting by the family of Martin Smith, which we considered credible. For Peter and the other investigators, the child's body was not taken on the night of 3rd of May 2007, but at another time. One of the things that can be drawn from this theory, the death and concealment of the body before 3rd of May, is that although the testimonies of Jane Tanner, Nuno, and the family of Martin Smith are not very credible, one thing is certain. They all seem to describe the same person, a person who resembles the father of the missing child. The Paul, the man who, according to Nuno, tried to kidnap his daughter, resembles him even in the way he dressed at the time. With this theory, one cannot argue in favor of the abduction, saying that if the death had occurred on the 3rd of May 2007, the parents would not have had the calm and tranquility to have dinner with friends and hide the body of their daughter. It's an almost undeniable fact that the child disappeared, but the manner and circumstances in which it happened are not. For the advocates of the abduction thesis, the non-involvement of the parents in any criminally relevant act results from the objective circumstances of not being in the flat at the time of their disappearance. their normal behavior up to and after the disappearance, and the strict time frame between the start of the dinner and the alert. Everything seems to change if that occurred days before. I recall that if the British dog's marks are anything to go by, there was an unexplained body odor in the wardrobe of the girl's parents' bedrooms. A strange detail of the crime scene is that the child's bed was made up as if she had not been sleeping there. On the other hand, only two cups were found on the kitchen counter with the remains of a chocolatada ingested by the children before going to bed. The question is simple. If there were three children, why only two cups? Which is a very legitimate question and kind of a basic question, which again, there not being three cups instead of two cups, there not being three cups and there were only two cups, it's strange in itself because, yeah, just like Amaral is asking, why were there only two cups if there were three children? I'm sure that all three of them had the same chocolate drink. So, and Amaral is carrying on. I reckon that the Attorney General, upon receiving the letter from this group of investigators, and because it's not about lunatics or a conspiracy theory or nonsense, should have sent it to the Prosecutor General's office, which is in charge of the criminal case. Despite having sent the letter, I fear that neither the public prosecutor's office nor the judicial police have given it the respective importance, being so immersed in their function of advising the Grange and Wrexham operations. On the part of the Portuguese, the British, and now the Germans, there seems to be no genuine and serious attempt to carry out this investigation. It's such a shame though, really, because there are so many people and professionals who are investing all the time that they have without gaining anything from it, and at the end of the day, they are not even taken into account. They are completely dismissed, and we are talking here about professionals. Chapter number 23: Voluntary disappearance. In addition to the possible involvement in the disappearance, the parents oppose the hypothesis that the child left the flat alone voluntarily and only defend the hypothesis that she was abducted by a PDF. All hypotheses being open, it's important to analyze the possibility that the disappearance was voluntary. Andre van Dokkum, professor at the Department of Sociology of the University of Macau, published in 2018 in the Macau Tribune newspaper, in a series of 4 opinion articles, a very well elaborated work in which he addresses the hypothesis of a voluntary departure of the child. The author begins by listing the three basic possibilities: the child was abducted, she was hidden after dying in the flat, or she was left alone. For this author, the last scenario is stronger than the first, but so far he has not been provided with a specific exit stimulus proposal. The second theory, by Goncalo Amaral, implies that Madeleine's parents hid her body after a fatal accident when they were having dinner at the tapas restaurant with friends, checking on the children from time to time. The theory is popular, but it contains very problematic aspects. This author considers that I have performed an insufficient analysis of my own data and considers it absurd to assume that the friends were well informed about the death and that they wanted to place Matthew Oldfield, I think, is referring here to, inside the flat at the time when a child is dying or has just died moments before. This author's conclusion relates to the understanding that Matthew Oldfield's visit actually existed, this because lying people often report alibis in which they are away from dead bodies, not near them when they were not. The parents and a group of friends decided to put Matthew Oldfield outside the door of the room, and the father suggested inside the room in the 4th of May statement. These people were wrong to emphasize the sighting of Jane Tanner, suggesting that the abductor was probably the man seen at 9:30 p.m. This would be misplaced as the abduction could have occurred before and after Matthew Oldfield's visit. For the advocate of the hypothesis that the girl left the flat alone, It was Matthew Oldfield's visit that woke her up. He concludes that the group considered that Matthew Oldfield's visit was implicated in the disappearance by disturbing the child, which led her to leave the flat through the unlocked front door in search of her parents. Thus, what the group is trying to conceal is not the concealment of a corpse, but the likelihood that the group's own system of neglect with controls was the primary cause of the disappearance of the child. Based on these conclusions, that the child was awakened by Matthew Oldfield's presence and accepting the system of abandonment which checks as true, the author wonders whether the missing child knew of the existence of such a system, concluding that she was never informed, so that on being disturbed by Matthew Oldfield's entry, she would have seen him as an intruder and her parents as missing. And so she went to look for him outside the flat. Okay, before I move on, uh, I think that what this author is concluding, it doesn't make sense. That's very far-fetched because Madeleine was almost 4 years old, so how would she even think of an intruder at her age? I mean, it's not like she's an adult, so I don't know. To me, it just doesn't make sense. To me, it sounds ridiculous. C saying Sagres is the guy Nuno refers to. The abduction attempt he refers to took place in Sagres. That's the Polish guy, isn't he? He refers to the Polish guy. Yes, that's true as well. Hi, Ali. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, I know it's very late. I do apologize. I didn't intend on doing a live today, but yeah, it was just kind of like, let me just get this here, just a last minute thing. According to Andre van Dokkum, the group knew that the girl went out alone because some elements were looking for her, looking for a girl, not a girl possibly with an adult. The girl's mother, in Madeleine's case, even justifies the father's participation in the search for her daughter as having been abandoned by the abductor, which, in the case of a real abduction, is not plausible in that short space of time. For example, the mother admits the possibility that Madeleine was walking alone in the street. As for the way the child went out alone, the author draws attention to what the mother writes in her book. He considers it an insult to our intelligence that the child went out talking only through the window and blinds facing the backyard without any reference to the front door, intentionally omitting the front door, which had become a problem for the abduction version. But the problem was solved by emphasizing the shutter and the window and the kidnapper's theory. For the author, the front door was visible to those accessing the flat through the back shutters, so the mother intentionally omits the door, which is suggested was open at the time of entering the house. The parents' other problem was to place Matthew Oldfield inside Madeleine's room. The problem was solved by placing Matthew outside the bedroom door and the sighting of Jane Tanner. And the group's final narrative is an artificial fusion of these two components. The Jane Tanner sighting can be interpreted as obfuscating the impact of the visit by placing the supposedly probable abduction before the visit of Matthew Oldfield, nullifying any causal connection between the visit and the disappearance. However, for the author, Matthew's visit was a likely trigger for the child to leave the flat, and it's around this idea that this theory gravitates. Thus, the thesis of a single exit of the child through the front door, which according to the author was not locked, gains strength. As for the thesis of the abduction of the group, is not credible. If there had been an abduction, there would be no need for curious reports. As for what the author calls the corpse concealment thesis, this depended on the sled dogs, taking into account that dogs have the ability to detect the smell of a corpse and human blood. According to him, the dogs did not indicate anything positive, specifically on the coast of Praia da Luz, where the corpse is likely to have been deposited. A corpse would not be the only possible reason to underline an abduction, because what would call into question the system of abandonment with control is that the child went off alone. Even without a real surveillance scheme, Matthew Oldfield could have entered the missing child's flat, but in this case he was assigned the missing child alive. It's difficult to conduct conjectural analysis when the group and the child's parents have introduced a falsehood into their account of events, the existence of a surveillance scheme. In agreeing to be part of the list of visitors to the missing child, Matthew was careful through his statements, despite complying with the wishes of the group, not to commit himself to the disappearance. He said he only peeked in the bedroom door. It was not about a dead body and the need to be as far away from him as possible, but only about his involvement in a false report of abduction, which required a plan to watch the children left in the flat while the parents partied at the restaurant. The theory we have reported here omits one relevant piece of information: what appears to be a disinterested testimony from the family of Martin Smith. This testimony claims the sighting of a man with a child on his lap, who could be the father and the missing child. Focusing only on the existence of a man with a child on his lap in Jane Tanner's testimony is too reductive and does not allow for an analysis of the whole picture. On the other hand, this author has not understood the content of my book, what it contains. The book I wrote in 2008 revolves around the provisional conclusions of the Judicial Police contained in the interim report drawn up by Chief Inspector Tavares de Almeida and relating to the first 4 months of the criminal investigation, nothing more. Chapter number 24: The Victory of Freedom of Expression and Opinion. After 8 long years of fighting for freedom of expression and opinion, of seizures and arrests, with a view to trials, court decisions, appeals, and an intense media and publicity campaign driven by the child's parents, the Portuguese Supreme Court of Justice ruled in my favor, as the Lisbon Court of Appeal had already done in the appeal against the restraining order and in the appeal against the decision of the Court of First Instance. The child's parents were wrong in what they claimed. The writing of my book, Maddie, A Verdade da Mentira, was a lawful act and caused no harm. What was at issue in the civil case brought by the child's parents, in which they asked me for 1,200,000 euros in damages, was the legality of my writing, the harm that my book may have caused, whether there were facts to prove it, and whether it was possible to establish a causal link between the book and that harm. It was not a judicial decision on the possible responsibility of the parents for the disappearance of their daughter. In their arguments, they used the dismissal decision as an exoneration decision and the presumption of innocence from which they should benefit. They hoped for a civil court decision that would serve their intentions and desires, to be above suspicion in the disappearance. The child's parents considered themselves absolutely innocent, and with the closure of the criminal proceedings, innocent. They also considered that they were entitled to benefit from the presumption of innocence. The central question before the Supreme Court was how to resolve the conflict between the parents' rights to their good name and reputation and my right to freedom of expression and opinion. In resolving this conflict between two fundamental rights, freedom of expression and honor, it must be borne in mind that the parents are public figures and that a matter of public interest is at stake. The child's parents, according to the Supreme Court of Justice, are public figures because they intervene publicly to influence a debate of public interest, whereby the dimension of their public life linked to that debate subjects them to a public interest in information which guarantees them access to the media. And it was voluntarily that they accepted to be thrown into the vulnerability of the public square as a consequence of the role they intended to assume in the public debate in which they decided to intervene. It was the parents who, over the years, multiplied in interviews and interventions in the national and international media, thus opening the way for anyone to also give their opinion on the case, contradicting their thesis. The disappearance of the child and the subsequent investigation became topics of general interest and debate at national and international level. For the Supreme Court of Justice, the principle of the presumption of innocence is a rule of treatment that must be afforded to the accused throughout the criminal proceedings and cannot become a restriction on the public discussion of the facts. The decision to close the case is not an exculpatory decision. The criminal case can be reopened is not a judicial decision in the strict sense of the word, nor is it definitive, and therefore the invocation of the principle of the presumption of innocence as a means to restrict freedom of expression is not justified. As reaffirmed by the Supreme Court of Justice, it cannot be said that the parents of the minor were exonerated by the order to close the criminal proceedings, as the closure was determined because it was not possible for the public prosecutor's office to obtain sufficient evidence of criminal wrongdoing on the part of the parents. The Supreme Court of Justice was very clear in stating that it does not seem acceptable to consider that the aforementioned order, based on insufficient evidence, should be considered as proof of innocence. And my own humble opinion here, I'm going to add it because I have my mouth and I can't shut up, it seems. So basically, I I don't think I've ever heard these things coming out of either Jerry or Kate Mccann or Kate McCann anywhere or anyone who is on their side. Nobody ever mentioned that the Supreme Court stated it does not seem acceptable to consider that the aforementioned order based on insufficient evidence should be considered as proof of innocence. Because these people, Kate and Jerry McCann, and their whole circle, they sing left and right that they are innocent, we are innocent, the investigation is closed, and never once did anyone, as far as I remember, even mention what the Supreme Court of Justice said. Okay, moving on. So Gonzalo Amaral is also saying, in weighing the interests at stake, freedom of expression, in this case, needed greater protection than personality rights. My retirement pension was not paid in full for many months. One third was taken away as if I owed something to the child's parents. This scandalous situation endangered my survival and my various monthly commitments. This garnishment launched by these parents is proof that their main interest is to silence me by financial suffocation. If the parents needed my money to find their daughter safe and sound, they will have to go and knock on another door. The time has come to get back the thousands of euros they have pawned off on me over the years. Chapter number 25. The construction of a suspect. Oh, by the way, guys, we are at page 81 out of 141, so it's not too long left, but obviously I'm not going to finish today. It's possible that the I will finish reading the book in the next live. But anyway, let's carry on with chapter 25, the construction of a suspect. At least in mid-2017, although there are indications that it had already occurred in 2016, the BKA, the BKA, oh my God, I can't read anymore. The BKA, a German criminal investigation agency, is involved in the search for and construction of a suspect, according to a document drawn up in June 2018 by the head of the Portuguese investigation. For about a year now, the judicial police has been in contact with the German police authorities in order to gather information about this individual and his alleged crimes. Almost 14 years after the disappearance, the politically correct investigation is still one in which there is no room for hypotheses other than that of kidnapping, nor are the provisional conclusions reached by the investigation in the first days and months taken into account. It is necessary to find the ideal suspect, the PDF, who satisfies the parents, the police and judicial authorities, and above all, the demanding public scrutiny. There can be no gaps, Everything has to fit, even at the risk of there being indications that the fit was forced. I recall the words of Luis Neves, the current National Director of the Judicial Police, spoken in the corridors of the court more than a decade ago. It was the trial of the injunction brought by the children's parents. Luis was there of his own free will, but he seemed a little tired and exhausted by the case, and in a way of venting his frustration, he said, "They," referring to the British police, "they should have already found someone who fits the profile of the kidnapper. Suspicion would remain and the case would be over." I understood perfectly well what he meant by those foreboding words. In the path of the investigation was not one of possible parental involvement in the disappearance, looking for PDFs, let a politically correct solution be sought as a final solution. For the British agency, NPIA, in a report produced in June 2007, the probability falls on a preferential PDF, which it defines as someone who has a specific sexual preference for children. This would be a premeditated and pre-planned crime committed after surveillance of the family's place and routine, which denotes organization and fixation on the child. Furthermore, according to the NPIA, as he is a preferential PDF, it's likely that he has a criminal record. As for the sex and age of the abductor, the NPIA points to a man between 20 and 40 years old, familiar with the place and Praia da Luz, with a deep knowledge of the Ocean Club and the flats. Therefore, in addition to the village staff, delivery and maintenance staff, building contractors, vendors, real estate agents, cleaning and security staff, the possible suspect could also be a person connected to the intrusions and thefts in the flats. Although the MPIA report states that the possible involvement of the family in the disappearance cannot be ruled out, and it can be considered that in weighing up the basis of the investigation, this hypothesis deserves as much attention as the sexually motivated criminal one. It must be stressed that there is no evidence directly supporting an involvement of the family, but given the absence of decisive evidence to the contrary, such a hypothesis must be explored beyond the alternative hypothesis. Contrary to what the NPIA report indicates, the British Operation Grange and the German Operation Recon, with the collaboration of the Portuguese police authorities, following a single path in a kind of a headlong rush. Through the collection and analysis of information available in their databases and the work of private detectives, they try to find the individual who fits the profile of a preferential child abuser living near Praia da Luz or simply a PDF. Everything seems to count, ignoring the provisional conclusions and the facts contained in the Portuguese investigation, whose case was reopened not with new facts, but after a kind of syndication made by professional colleagues. In Portugal, there is no longer an independent investigation, even if it cooperates with other police and judicial authorities, and is limited to following the path marked out by the British, that is to say, finding the ideal suspect, the one who fits in and can be blamed, even without evidence or proof, for having the right profile. So there you go, it's a confirmation. I feel that this is a confirmation that they only want to find the perfect suspect, no matter the ideal suspect, no matter if there is proof or there is no proof. They just need to have the right profile and just get the suspect out there. So that's why Christian Bruckner it's always pushed, to do this, to not to do this, but to I can't speak anymore for to be named and to be always in the news and always pointing the finger at. The Portuguese criminal procedure will easily be replaced by German criminal procedure. The Portuguese justice system seems to fear the process whose investigation, in the sense of discovering the material truth, its exclusive territorial responsibility and competence, and yet it looks favorably on the investigation of another country that has nothing to do with the criminal acts committed in Portugal. The, the way remains open for an investigation by the German police and judicial authorities. I reiterate that the Portuguese judiciary cannot relinquish its competence and become a mere spectator. The self-styled German competence to investigate the disappearance is based on an almost fraudulent artifice, the construction of an alleged PDF of German nationality and resident in the Praia da Luz area in May 2007. It's such a shame. I feel like the way that Gonzalo Amaral is describing this. I feel like the Polizia Judiciaria, they just gave up on this investigation in the sense that they kind of got fed up of all the political pressure and of all these problems that they've been having. That I don't think that they want to, how can I say this? I don't think that they want to prove any longer that something happened to Madeleine Mccann in the apartment and perhaps the parents are guilty because they just receive too much pressure. And I think that they know that no matter what they do, there is so much political pressure on them that they would never be able to take any action really against the parents. The child's mother wrote in her book, published in 2011, what she considered to be revelations about allegations of an individual who had intruded into the holiday flats of English families, sleeping in the children's beds and subjecting them to various forms and degrees of SA, allegedly occurring in the Albufeira area in August 2006. The alleged perpetrator of the intrusions and abuse of the children previously studied the behavioral patterns and routines of the families, finding loopholes in the security of the flats and finding out in which rooms the parents and children slept. And I'm wondering, where is she getting this information from? And why is it so important for her to mention this in her book, since this happened in August 2006? And I'm sure, no offense to anyone, but I'm sure that there were not only English families on holidays in that area ever, or let's just say 2006, 2007. It seems that the mother's revelations have been dismissed by British, German, and Portuguese investigators either because the scene of such crimes is far from Praia da Luz or because they are fantasies. The suspect is a construction worker from an Eastern European country, or perhaps he was left out because the children were not the same age as the missing girl, or because he was not SA, which, if it occurred, would be the responsibility of the judicial police and not the Republican National Guard, as the mother claims. The fact is that the British investigation focused on gathering and analyzing information relating to the persons or the person residing in the vicinity of the village of Praia da Luz, probably from information contained in the Portuguese criminal file, possibly in the work of private detectives in payment of the parents and witnesses who have been profiled over the years. One of the names in the Portuguese file seemed to have the right profile. 31 years old in 2007, male, resident in the area, and suspected of burglary in flats in Praia da Luz with a criminal record related to a crime against minors. He is a German citizen with a long criminal record starting in 1993 in Germany with the practice of a theft offense and driving without license. As of 2015, this individual has only one conviction for child SA and sexual acts which occurred in 1995. He was 19 years old at the time. The criminal activity is varied and comprehensive and includes drug trafficking in small quantities, bodily harm, robbery, possession of a prohibited weapon, and forgery of documents. It was at the time of his conviction for child SA that he decided to come to live in southern Portugal with his girlfriend. The relationship lasted until December 2000. And of course, we know who he's talking about. And Gonzalo Amaral goes on. We are talking about Christian Bruckner, a man who seems to be another product of a dysfunctional family. At the age of 1 year, together with two brothers, he was given up for adoption. He lived with a family that punished and beat them on a daily basis. At 14 years old, he was placed in a children's home and he never met his biological parents or saw his siblings again. He attended secondary school and learned auto mechanics. In Portugal, he made a living from seasonal work and, according to friends and acquaintances, from stealing or receiving solar panels in holiday flats and diesel. For the latter offense, he was arrested in Portimao during 2006. The BKA accessed in 2014 a Skype chat conversation held on 29th of March 2013 between Christian B and Frank S., the latter having a criminal record for acquisition, possession, and distribution of underage porn. In this exchange, Christian Bruckner appears to express his desire to have sex with children in the near future. The conversation is shocking, typical of PDFs. It starts with normal greetings, but quickly turns into a wish of the user Wannsee der Holger, according to the German police. It is Christian Bruckner, who writes, "Finally, I want to F." Oh, that's disgusting. A little girl. Take something small and use it for days. When the interlocutor warns of the risks of such an act, Wannsee der Holger replies, "Oh, if the evidence is destroyed afterwards." This sentence can be interpreted as a possible reference to the murder of a child after the commission of SA. But the user not only expresses his desire to perpetrate SA followed by death, but also intends to film such abuse, which is evident from the statement, "I will make a lot of films. I'm going to document exactly how they torture her." I confess that reading the unpleasant content of this conversation shocked me. The suspect is someone who has no qualms about expressing his PDF desires and readily talks about torturing and murdering a child, as well as indicating his intention to film such acts and then use them for his and others' pleasure. I don't even know if the person making these statements is trying to impress the speaker, but what I read is very shocking. At such moments, I think of the difficulties of any criminal investigation. We often get carried away by our emotions when what is needed is a clear and objective approach, guided by the discovery of the material truth. I write with no intention to accuse or exonerate anyone. I analyze a criminal investigation with the necessary objectivity and detachment. I look at the details, the sequence of events, and the way they are interpreted, as if I were in the investigator's shoes, and like them, I try to contribute to the discovery of the material truth. The result of this chat conversation is the confirmation that the police, at least since 2014, knew that Christian B, being the user, intended to document torture and essay on film long before any formal statement from such credible witnesses. What the suspect allegedly wrote does not seem to correspond to his actions. On 16th of June 2013, just over 2 months after the chat conversation, suspect Christian took abusive photographs of a 4-year-old girl with blonde hair. Among other things, he photographed her private parts. In these photographs, the girl makes sensual poses, which, according to the police, sexually arouse the offender. These photographs were found in a camera belonging to Christian B, seized in the course of a house search at his residence in Germany, because I can't pronounce the name of that, Neugersleben, on 2nd of July 2014. At the time, the victim was not identified, and Christian B was convicted of committing a child offence and sentenced to 1 year and 3 months in prison, for which he was extradited from Portugal in 2017. It's not known what Christian B did with these photographs. For example, it's not known whether he published them on the internet. However, it's established that despite having a child in his possession, he did not have sexual relations with the child, torture or kill, contrary to the wishes expressed in the conversation with Frank F. This Christian guy is very, very disgusting. But my question is, did they really confirm that the user who said these things was Christian B in fact? Because to me, it kind of seems weird because when you are talking about child offender, um, usually there's loads of conversations happening. You would find loads of messages and chats going, and you would find victims, quite possibly, not only one. I don't know. What do you guys think? Okay, C is saying the McCanns are also very clear about pushing the narrative that there is no evidence to suggest they had anything to do with it. Not true, as proved by the Supreme Court judgment. Exactly. Because I think that they are counting on people not knowing about the judgment or not reading this judgment, and maybe the judgment is not even publicly available. Because me, for example, I have no idea where I could find it. JD is saying Christian was made to be Patsy, a color guy, in my opinion. Yes, I do agree with you as well. That's why I'm a bit. Mm, I'm wondering, is that username really Christian Bruckner? Have they ever been able to 100% say it was his? Okay, guys, we are reaching the chapter 26, but I'm gonna take like a 5 minute break, and you guys take a 5 minute break, have some coffee, have some water, have some whatever you wanna have. I just need to keep quiet for 5 minutes, to take a break for 5 minutes, and I need to drink some water as well. Okay, see you guys in five. Okay, so I'm back. Let me see if this. Yes, it's working. Okay, I was just double checking the sound here. Yes, coffee time, JD, coffee time. Yes. Can you believe it at this time at night? Oh, great. C is saying here, I agree with you, Kat. Christian B in jail is in jail for RAPING, an old woman. Yes. You know why, guys? I'm doing lives on Fridays usually because I'm thinking that during the weekend people usually don't work. So that's why. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna carry on with reading. So, chapter number 26, The Chance Discovery. In January 2016, the siege of Christian B began to tighten. On a icy morning on 14th of January, on the premises of a former box factory in the German town of Neuwegersleben, whatever, where Christian B owned and lived in a camper van, a disgruntled neighbor called the local police because of a foul smell coming from a certain spot of land that was practically frozen solid. The smell was said to be so intense that, unlike the soil, it didn't freeze and became entrenched in the neighbor's nostrils. That's very strange. I mean, I am not a scientific person at all. No science here, just like a normal person on the internet rambling about everything and anything. But but my question here is, if the spot of land was practically frozen solid, how could it be smelling? Yes, you could say when it's summer, it's hot, it's whatever, it will smell obviously, but when the soil is solid, frozen, solid, will it still smell? Seriously, in my head, I don't see how it can smell. Unless I'm a complete idiot and maybe it smells, I don't know. 30 centimeters down, the police found the rotting corpse of a brown Labrador retriever, and underneath it, a bag from the Lidl supermarket containing firewood for burning. In the Lidl bag, 6 USB sticks and 2 memory cards are found and seized, containing photographs of Christian B, photographs of children, including those of an unknown child in sensual poses, and in particular, Word documents which the police responsible for the discovery describe as having been written about serious SA of children. Sometime later, the BKA identified these and other writings as 2 documents produced by the suspect under the titles Das Buch and Das Buch 1. These alleged autobiographical books talk about himself and his friends and describe the commission of crimes. It's not known whether this is real or pure fantasy, but the facts remain that the discovery of all this material was and is useful for the construction of a suspect. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but BKA, is that a criminal investigation from Germany into Christian Bruckner? And it's also very convenient, isn't it, that all these stuff are being found after so long. So hold on a minute. It says here that it was in 2016. 2016. So Madeleine Mccann disappeared in 2007. Christian Bruckner became a suspect not so late after, and only in 2016 was this discovered. Okay, I don't know, you guys. I don't really have many words. Well, I do have a lot of words, but I'm going to refrain myself from saying it. But I smell some bull here. Operation Rake, German reckon, seems to be underway. For SA by producing photographs of an unknown child in sensual poses, which according to the police and judicial authorities are such as to produce arousal in the perpetrator, the suspect was sentenced to 1 year and 3 months of effective imprisonment. An arrest warrant for possession of underage porn was issued on 8th of June 2016. 2 months later, as the whereabouts of the convicted person were unknown, a European arrest warrant was issued. In June 2017, Christian Bruckner was arrested in the town of São Bartolomeu de Messines in the Algarve when the Republican National Guard was called to the scene because he was urinating or exposing himself in front of children at the end of the night of a local party. On 26th of June of the same month, he was extradited to Germany to serve his sentence. It was not until July 2018, long after Christian's conviction, that the unknown child in the photographs was identified. At the time of the photographs, she was 4 years old. She is the daughter of a friend of Christian Bruckner. They met in Germany in early 2013. The girl's mother went so far as to state that she didn't believe that Christian Bruckner had abused her daughter, but the police were keen to reinforce that he had been convicted of essay of the child, the submission of photographs being the issue. Huh. This is like grasping at straws here. Is that the saying? Yeah. So basically, they are finding every small, tiny, minuscule bit to kind of pin it on him just because they need someone. They need someone. Oh yes, JD. Yeah. Don't even get me started because no. I'm if I would if I would say everything, I'm sure that YouTube would ban me, in the next 5 minutes. Okay, let's just move on to the next chapter. This is getting more and more ridiculous the more I read about all these things. Chapter 27, The Little Delinquent. Nice title. Memory sometimes betrays us and leads us to false or erroneous statements. In writing this book, I have relied on documents to refresh my memory and help me in writing clearly and objectively. But there are people whose memory does not betray them. This seems to be the case of a self-styled petty criminal arrested in Greece in 2015 for human trafficking. He was sentenced to serve 7 years and 3 months in prison. This individual, at some point during his actual deprivation of liberty, decided to contact the British police authorities investigating Maddie's disappearance. LGB is a German who claims to have grown up in Germany until 1993, when he decided to travel around Europe. He started in Nice, in the south of France, and the following year he moved to Corsica, where he seems to live now. In Corsica, he found work as a roofer and met a French woman. He moved in with a French woman, and from this relationship, a son was born. In 2001 or 2002, he left the family. At the time of his departure, he seems to have been a benefactor, leaving his wife and son, the family home, and 2 cars, taking 30,000 euros with him and restarting his life as a traveler. He visited Marseille, Paris, Barcelona, Valencia, where he met Manfred S., another German traveler. When his money ran out, he found another way of life. He did not even think about working, but immediately started committing robberies, thefts, and other types of crimes. In 2003, he settled with Manfred, his partner and co-conspirator in illegal activities, in a hippie community in the Spanish town of Orgiva. They came to southern Portugal to steal fuel, diesel, solar panels, and other goods. While in Portugal, he used a motorhome parked at the so-called Granja Rebelde, located in Santa Clara near the dam of the same name, where there is a large German community. This farm is owned by a German citizen known as Shahin. In 2005, in Orgiva, he met a German citizen named Michael T., an individual who, like Manfred, is described by the criminal as a drug addict and alcoholic, as well as stupid. This Michael was involved in the theft of solar panels in the Algarve, joining forces with Helgi and Manfred. Helgi says that in early 2006, when Michael was already living in the Algarve and continuing his criminal activity, he came to Portugal in the company of Manfred, who had arranged a meeting with Michael, although they had an argument. The meeting took place in a bar in Portimao. Michael arrived with the person in whose house he was living at the time, a German man who introduced himself as Christian, known as Oberkellner because of his neat way of dressing with buttoned shirts and always wearing a jacket. This was the now suspect Christian B. For the criminal, there was something strange about Christian, but he couldn't explain why. On the other hand, Christian was suspicious of Helgi and did not allow him to accompany him home that night. He stayed at the bar, waiting for Manfred to return with the stolen solar panels borrowed from Michael and Christian. 2 or 3 days after the first meeting, Michael and Christian appeared in Organiva to sell solar panels. Helgi was not amused, as he was the one who had the exclusive right to this illegal trade there. The bad relations between him and Christian must have worsened because at the time described he spoke separately to Michael and told him of his dissatisfaction. Christian must have been aware of this comment. For Helgi, the lack of trust Christian had shown in him at the first meeting was not enough, let alone Christian's impudence to interfere in his business. Sometime later, is not known how long, and this is an important detail, Helgi and Manfred were in Santa Clara at the rebel farm when they learned that Christian and Michael were in prison for stealing fuel. They decided to commit a theft of diesel fuel that they knew existed in a tank next to the house. This decision was in line with the ethical and moral principles of Helgi and Manfred. For Helgi, his principles led him not to steal from his neighbors, but from people further away. For Manfred, on the other hand, stealing was stealing, and it made little difference whether the victims were neighbors. In March 2008, Helgi was still living and doing business in Organiva when he saw and spoke again with Christian. At first, he was afraid that he would know who the perpetrators of the burglary in his house were, because many people knew about it. But despite this fear and the fact that Christian distrusted him from the first day, the small criminal with very fragile principles will make a compromising and relevant confession that will have repercussions in the future. It's worth mentioning that Christian's stay in Orgiva at the time mentioned is confirmed by the fact that he had an accident there with the motorhome he was using. The accident was reported to the German insurance company, but is not known when the German police became aware of the incident. It was 2010 when Helgi, 40 years old and in possession of a big secret but with no money, decided to leave the city and go to Italy to try his luck. Luck seemed to want nothing to do with him, and on 22nd of April 2011, he was living as a beggar on the streets of the small Italian town of Brindisi in the Puglia region, forced to share a piece of floor space in a dilapidated house with other homeless people. One night, he became involved in a dispute over begging territory with the other occupants of the space, and was arrested for participation in a brawl, offenses against physical integrity, resisting and threatening the police, and abusive possession of objects capable of causing injury. A few days earlier, he had been arrested in the streets of Brindisi after stealing 20 euros and violently assaulting a young beggar woman of Polish origin. Despite this arrest and the direct contact with police and judicial elements, Helgi does not make use of his secrecy. It is possible that he only spent a few days in prison. From being a vagabond, Helgi seems to have moved on to a life of decadence and is arrested in the area of the important Greek seaport of Igoumenitsa. He's arrested for human trafficking. I am really, guys, before I carry on, I'm really just taking a gamble here with the pronunciations of these names, seriously, because I feel like I'm doing such a terrible job. But anyway, never mind, I'm trying. So, he's arrested for human trafficking while transporting three illegal immigrants, having been detained for only 5 days during the early stages of the investigation and criminal proceedings. One gets the idea that the short period of imprisonment did not show the need to make use of Christian B's confession and secrecy, or else there was no secrecy at all. It was 2015 when Helgi was rearrested in Greece to serve a sentence of 7 years and 3 months in prison. The charge was human trafficking. He was placed in a prison in Crete. In his words, I was told that I had been convicted and sentenced in absentia to 7 years and 3 months in prison. I was very angry, yes. I am a petty criminal, but I only gave them a lift. It was not human trafficking. Interestingly, he was paroled on 12th of April 2017. His sentence was due to end in 2021. This parole release raises suspicions that something unusual may have happened, possibly that he may have made use of the pseudo-history he had kept for many years. What is known is that he was approached in prison by members of the British police as part of the Grange operation, following telephone contacts made on the prisoner's initiative, and that months after his parole, he was being formally questioned as a witness against Christian Bruckner. What a plot! What a plot! It feels like it's soap opera here. Seriously, doesn't feel like real life. The police authorities involved in the opening of secrecy claim that this petty criminal, thief, wife-beater and traveler with a connection to alcohol and drug abuse, former vagrant and human trafficker, provided information voluntarily and without any monetary or other consideration, despite the fact that at the time of providing the information, he was serving a heavy prison sentence. I'm sure that he made a deal. I'm sure that he made a deal. This is my opinion. Manfred, his partner in crime for more than 20 years, someone who knows Helgi very well, defines Helgi as a manipulative, stubborn, domineering, and aggressive bully who does wrong to others in order to make himself look good to those who listen to him. Helgi presents himself as a nice guy. If he makes an effort, he can express himself and sell himself very well. He's a drug addict, having used everything imaginable from crack to heroin, cocaine, cannabis, and mushrooms. After his time in prison in Greece, things got a bit better, but after 4 months, he was back on drugs again. Chapter number 28. A testimony with motivations. On 2nd of February 2018, Helgi was in London at the Metropolitan Police and made formal statements in German. It does not appear to us that he traveled and stayed in London on his own account. The cost of travel, accommodation, and food must have been a small burden on a police operation that had already spent millions of pounds searching for a PDF responsible for the disappearance of Madeleine Mccann. I'm laughing because it's just unbelievable. I'm laughing because look at this guy. He got, never mind. He even got to travel to London for free. Gosh, okay. Helgi's statement was prepared in advance and police investigators had evidence of it. Photographs of people, places, and vehicles are shown, which leads to the conclusion that this statement was not spontaneous. For example, it was not advised or forced, it was not made or said of his own free will, it was made by himself and without apparent cause. It should be noted that Helgi even states that I was shown these photos again today. He adds that the photos, including those of Christian B, had already been shown to him, but it is established that he recognized him. In these matters of recognition by means of photos, there is always the doubt as to who the witness is recognizing, who he really knows, or who he had been shown the photograph of before. An extract from Helgi's statement shows that the police had been pursuing Christian Bruckner for some time. Today, I was also shown the exhibit MRD-17. There were 3 pages with a total of 16 photos. I was asked if I recognized any of the photos. I recognized Christian in 5 of the photos, the ones with the numbers 2, 3, 5, 9, and 15. Uh, I'm getting a sound in my ear. I think that the battery is going in this headset. Let me double check. Oh gosh, it's only 20% left of the battery. Okay, guys, you know what? I'm gonna have to change my mic and I'm going to use the computer's mic, which is gonna sound bad, I think. But I don't have any more battery left in the headset. Okay, hold on a second, please.
How does it sound? Does it sound terrible? Oh, great. Okay. Siri is saying here, you couldn't make this stuff up, right? Truth is definitely stranger than fiction in this case. Yeah. Jay is saying definitely. Next thing we know, GM and KM will be on Jeffrey Epstein list. You never know. You never know. Much better? Oh, okay. Maybe I should use this mic from now on. Oh my god, I'm so horrible at these things. Okay, let me just carry on. Where was I left? Okay, so he was shown a total of 16 photos. I was asked if I recognized any of the photos. I recognized Christian in 5 of the photos, the one with the number 2, 3, 5, 9, and 15. I didn't recognize anyone else in them and none of the vehicles. I was also shown the test object MRD18. It was a series of 12 additional photos. I immediately recognized the same Jaguar model in photo 8 that Christian was driving. Photo 9 shows a car that looks like a Mercedes at the front. I remember Christian had such a Mercedes when he was in Portugal. Photo 11 shows an American motorhome, but there is not enough detail to be able to confirm if it is the one I saw Christian in at the 2008 Kite Festival. Photo 12 shows a typical solar system for residential buildings like those in Portugal. These are the statements of this individual who only met with British police investigators in August 2017 in Greece. That is months after his early release on parole and shortly after the arrest and extradition of Christian B to Germany. The reason for the reference to the time when he personally spoke to the English police officers is obvious. A cause and effect relationship between these 3 events cannot be established, or rather, there is an attempt to conceal this causality. An attempt is made to hide the fact that Helgi was in prison when he first spoke to the British police. According to Manfred, an accomplice in the robbery with Helgi, Helgi had told him about his intention to talk to the British police in order to be rewarded, even mentioning that in the UK there was a fund to pay a reward of more than 1 million euros. This was the case of Madeleine Mccann. Oh, I'm sure that this guy, he saw the payday of his life with the 1 million euros. Apparently, one of the meetings between Helgi and the British police took place in a hotel in Athens, surrounded by huge security measures in connection with illegal wiretapping and recording. But a journalist found out what happened and went after Helgi. Already in the historical summary of his life, he deliberately omits essential facts to understand his character and intentions, facts that cannot fail to be known to the investigators of the Metropolitan Police, in particular, his arrest in Brindisi in 2011, where he didn't hesitate to violently assault a young woman to get his hands on a measly 20 euros. The police omit this criminal record, which could serve to define the profile and character of this witness, as well as to assess the credibility of his testimony. They do not ask any questions about these events. They don't seem to be interested. On the other hand, Helgi reduces his human trafficking activity in Greece to a mere lifting of 3 passers-by, and once again, the approval of the interrogators is evident. They do not point out the seriousness of the criminal act as if they agree with the theory of a mere lifting. In reality, it was an act of human trafficking for which Helgi received money. He blatantly compromises, discredits, and vilifies his fellow criminals, namely Manfred and Michael, characterizing them as drug addicts and alcoholics, a portrait into which he himself fits. It makes no sense to tell you what Christian Bruckner would have confided to them at the Kite Festival, which took place in March 2008 in the Spanish town of Orgiva. Christian B is said to have been involved in the abduction of Madeleine McCann. LG assumes sole ownership of the information. His justification for never having reported to the police what he learned from the burglary of Christian Bruckner's house and the confession he claims to have heard from him in 2008 is surreal to say the least. His partner in crime, Manfred, from whom he separated in 2010. Oh, okay, I don't know if it's a he or a she. Okay, her partner in crime, Manfred, from whom she separated in 2010 when she left Orgiva for Italy and with whom she was reunited years later in Greece, considered talking to the police to be a betrayal. She wanted to talk to the police, but Manfred was against it, and so they had a disagreement. Despite this disagreement, Helgi did not go to the police, preferring to save the information for a better occasion. Helgi's statements focus on the robbery that he and Manfred allegedly carried out in 2006 at Christian B's residence, located near Praia da Luz, when he was imprisoned together with Michael for the theft of diesel oil. For some, he was verified and considered as a reliable source, only that he didn't report his concerns to the Portuguese police because when he tried to do so, he was misled. He had never been to Christian Bruckner's house. Christian had not trusted him and months earlier had left him waiting in a bar. Therefore, Helgi locates the house in Portimao, despite the efforts of the English investigators using satellite images of Praia da Luz. It's necessary to place the house nearby. This is another small detail that indicates prior knowledge on the part of the British police. They knew who Christian Bruckner is and where he lived. They didn't need Helgi to identify the individual and his house, but for other information. He describes the house inhabited by Christian in 2006 as white, isolated, near a resort with a red-tiled roof with cars parked outside. For him, in the center of the living room of the house, a tree had grown up to the roof. The house consisted of 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, bathroom, and living room, and a terrace at the back. Outside the house, there was a 1,000-liter tank with diesel fuel. According to Helgi, the house contained goods from burglaries, clothing, video cameras, and personal computers. The night he arrived there, driven by Manfred, the glass in one of the back windows was broken. There had already been another break-in and the door was slightly open. The objects, probably stolen, were scattered all over the place. It was like being in Aladdin's cave. Wonderful. The offender decided to take some valuables. He didn't take the personal computers because they could be located, which shows that he's a careful thief, although not taking personal computers at the scene of a residential burglary is not normal. In a cupboard, he found 2 Sony video cameras. The wardrobe belonged to Christian B. For Helgi, this was obvious, as he had clothing he normally wears and was well arranged. This statement by Helgi is strange for someone who has only met Christian once. He may have wondered about the style of the clothing. The video cameras contained their respective tapes. He stole more than 20 cassettes that were in a box. He only appropriated the tapes because they could be reused. Among the many desirable objects, Helgi was struck by a pair of swimming goggles, the lenses of which were painted gray, which he says struck him as strange, as nothing was visible due to the opacity of the lenses, and because of this detail, he never forgot them. In addition to the video cameras and the 22 cassettes, they took a revolver and between 200 and 300 liters of diesel, taken from the tank next to the house. At this point, I would like to make a small observation. When investigating a residential burglary, one of the questions to ask is, how did they get there and how did they leave with the stolen items? The perpetrator talks about the appropriation of 200, 300 liters of diesel fuel. There is no question as to how they transported such a quantity of fuel. In an interrogation, the lack of questions about the details of the commission of a crime, in this case residential burglary, demonstrates on the part of the person conducting the interrogation, that this is not a relevant crime. In the words of Helgi, he didn't know or like firearms, and it was Manfred who carried the weapon and then threw it into the waters of the Santa Clara Dam. After the robbery at Christian B's residence, They returned to the rebel farm in Santa Clara. Another indication. Oh, before I carry on, in which dam did they conduct a search recently? What was the name of the dam? Can you guys remember? I'm trying to find out. No, I thought it might be the same dam. I thought it might be Santa Clara Dam, but I don't think it is. Okay, never mind. It's not the same. Yeah, it wasn't that. It was another dam. I just checked now. I thought the same thing. I thought they was the same dam. Okay, let me carry on. Another indication of previous and preparatory contacts between the investigators and Helgi is the fact that the investigator claims that he had previously shown a photograph of himself next to the camper parked at Hacienda Rebelde. At this point in the narrative of Helgi's statements made in London on 2nd of February 2018, we have chosen to let him speak. I went to my motorhome with the cameras and the tapes. I was curious to know what was on them, so I started looking at the images. Some of the tapes were clearly of tourists, others were from birthday parties, etc. Obviously, they were stolen. Then I started watching a video in which I think a woman was raped. It was shocking. The place was obviously a seasonal rental house. However, what bothered me was the fact that Christian committed the crime. The video showed a white woman in her 70s and 80s lying face down on a bed. Although the man was still fully clothed, I could see him take his thing out of his trousers and put on a condom. The woman's hands were tied behind her back. The man turned her onto her back, and although I couldn't tell if he was inserting his thing in her, the way he was moving indicated that he was doing it. She was wearing a floral jumper pulled up to her waist. She was screaming and shouting at the man. She looked scared and shouted bastard and effing idiot in a British accent. The man was dressed all in black and wore a black cloth mask similar to the one a cyclist wears under his helmet, with only two holes for his eyes and one for his mouth. The woman was wearing swimming goggles painted gray, similar to the ones she had seen earlier at Christian's house in Portimao. As soon as the man stopped, I saw him remove the condom from his thing. He then left the camera's field of vision, but there was the sound of a cistern. The man then returned and began to whip the woman's chest and face with a small, wide-tipped leather whip. He gave her at least 20 lashes. It looked like he was trying to leave marks. She screamed as this happened. Then I saw him sitting on the end of the bed, breathing heavily. The man took off his mask, and I could see clearly that he was Christian. I could hardly believe it. I was shocked. I asked Manfred to come and take a look. He also recognized Christian in that video, but Manfred wanted nothing to do with him. He looked at the video briefly and left. The video ends with Christian putting a pillow on the victim's face, which made her scream. The filming was done with two cameras. Christian had apparently placed the cameras in different positions to film the RAPE. In two of the videos I have seen, the can be seen from two different angles. I have read and reread the statements of Helgi. Something doesn't add up. There is talk of a holiday flat, but there is no explanation as to why. The recording of the RAPE was made in film production mode with two cameras, which made it possible to record the same act from different angles. Are we looking at a mere home production of a sadomasochistic pornographic film, or at the recording of a real and horrendous act with excessive violence capable of satisfying fetishes and giving pleasure to the perpetrator? It's a doubt that is being raised. Let us return to the narrative of Helgi's statements. In addition to this recording, he claims to have seen another recording in which, according to him, a young woman was S8. He describes what he saw as follows. Another video showed Christian whipping a teenage girl. She was tied to a tree. I immediately recognized this tree as the one in the living room of Christian's house in Portimao. Her arms were around the tree and handcuffed. The girl was about 15 or 16 years old, white, slim, between 5 feet 6 inches and 5 feet 7 inches, with long straight dark hair, wearing glasses and naked. Christian was only wearing shorts. He was sitting on a sofa, facing her and laughing. The girl screamed and said in German to stop. She called him Chris and said, "This is a kidnapping. This is RAPE." Christian laughed at what she said. I didn't see the whole video, but during the clip, I saw Christian didn't physically touch the girl. The camera angle was so high that the girl may not have realized she was being filmed. Helgi claims that he doesn't recognize or know the girl nor where she is from. In a conversation with Manfred, the latter told him that Christian knew a woman who ran a home for difficult children in São Bartolomeu de Messines in the Algarve from Germany. The girl could have come from there, also because Manfred told him that the woman, in exchange for money, had already given Christian B one of these difficult girls. Faced with this possibility, and without any other information or evidence, Helgi is quick to conclude that Christian B obviously stole household appliances such as fridges and washing machines for this woman, and that the girl in the recording must be one of the difficult children from São Bartolomeu de Messines. This self-styled petty criminal says that he became worried after watching the videos because, according to him, he now knew what Christian B really was, a sick and crazy person. He didn't know what to do with that first secret, so he hid the tapes in the overhead compartment of his motorhome and didn't seek out the police to report the crimes he had just witnessed and which shocked him, but was able to sell the cameras for 50 euros each. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. It just sounds so made up. The motorhome with the secret videotapes was left parked at the Grania Rebelde while Helgi and Manfred returned to Orgiva. After his release from prison in December 2006, Michael went to live in Orgiva, at which point Helgi confided to him that while he was in prison, Christian was worried that he might get in trouble if the police found his address. It was something that was there. I knew he was referring to the videos. This conclusion of Helgi about Christian B's worries is interesting to say the least. Christian B's house, in his words, was full of stolen material. It looked like Aladdin's cave. The owner was in prison for theft of diesel fuel. He had a 1,000-liter tank next to the house with diesel fuel from thefts, but Helgi reduces the prisoner's worries to videotapes. This is a reductive conclusion, if not a lie. He wants to lend credibility to his testimony with details that may not be true. He lies, and in lying, details are added to turn the lie into a truth. And as we shall see below, very important facts are concealed, which cast doubt on Helgi's statement, especially with regard to the concern and shock he claims to have felt after viewing the videotapes. As mentioned above, Christian had traveled to the authority in March 2008. Helgi describes his surprise and fear when seeing him. He had just arrived in a motorhome. Everyone was surprised to see him arrive in that vehicle because Michael had said that 2 or 3 weeks earlier he had gone to Germany in the green Jaguar. I felt very bad because I didn't know if Christian suspected me of stealing the video cameras. The focus, once again on the videotapes, is interesting. Helgi and Manfred had broken into Christian's house, taking several possessions, but the fear is only related to the videotapes. Furthermore, he said, besides, I was afraid of him. Manfred was also there. Michael, Manfred, Christian, and I started talking about Portugal. And it was at that moment that the revelation came. It seems that out of nowhere, as if by magic, when they were all together, Manfred, Michael, and Helgi, just because they were talking about Portugal, Christian B confesses his involvement in the abduction of Madeleine Mccann, a few months after her disappearance. I imagine these 4 people together, linked by criminal activities, in the hippie community of Orgiva, a Spanish town in the lush valley of the Guadalfeo River, and perhaps because of the number, I think of the historical novel written in the 19th century by Alexander Dumas, the Three Musketeers, who are actually four. The four from Orgiva are the antithesis of Dumas's characters, with no principles of moral values, and little, if anything, to differentiate them. None of them can be considered heroes, quite the opposite, and we can hardly distinguish them by any personal or social qualities. Chapter number 29. The Testimony of the Homeless. Manfred S. was born in Germany in 1955. He studied motor vehicle mechanics. In 1978, at the age of 23, he got married. He is the father of a son and a daughter. The first lives in Ireland, the daughter in Germany. His wife is deceased. He has lived in several European countries. He worked as a truck driver and then in agriculture. When he turned to illegal activity, he started to live on theft and various files and considers himself a survivor. Today, he lives in a container. Every day, he sits with his dog outside the supermarket to beg for alms. His experiences revolve around drug and alcohol use. In 2018, he was located in Greece and on 8th of May in the city of Thessaloniki. There, he was interrogated by the German police liaison officer. The first question Manfred is asked about is Christian Bruckner. I drove from Spain to Portugal with Michael. We ran out of fuel. Michael left and came back with Oberkellner with diesel. Oberkellner arrived in his Jaguar. We talked and got to know each other cautiously. He offered to drive us to his house. We didn't need to talk much. We all knew each other. We saw that all was not well with him. Oberkellner was stealing from hotels. That was his job. He told me and Michael. We spent a few days at his house. This first meeting with Christian Bruckner reportedly took place in 2006, months before he and Michael were arrested for diesel theft. Note that this witness doesn't mention the presence of Helgi at this meeting. When he met Christian, whom he calls Oberkellner because of his neat way of dressing, tie shirt and everything nice, clean, tidy, they lacked money. To cope with this lack of cash, Christian suggested stealing solar panels, which happened. On the hotel burglaries by Christian, the witness said, he was a climber. He would climb the facades. From there, he would take care of everything. Video cameras, photos, storage sheet, everything they carry with them, even when people were sleeping in the room. He claimed to know about these thefts because he saw him bring the objects and Christian told him about the practice of the thefts. In response to the account of the hotel robberies, the witness was asked whether Christian had S8 people during his robberies, and the answer was, I don't know anything about that. The witness described Christian's house in detail, clarifying that, contrary to what Helgi claimed, there is no tree in the room, but a log that serves as a beam. Furthermore, contrary to Helgi's statement, there was no fuel tank with a capacity of 1,000 liters, but huge oil drums. And also, contrary to Helgi, he does not mention any meeting in a bar in Portimao or anywhere else. He clearly states that months before Christian and Michael were arrested, he traveled from Spain to Portugal only with Michael. As they ran out of fuel, Michael asked Christian for help and stayed for a few days at Christian's place. Helgi and Christian met only once, which was in Orgiva, after the latter's release from Portimao prison. When they found out that Michael and Christian were in prison, he and Helgi decided to go and steal the gas oil drums. At that time, he was living in Santa Clara with Helgi. When they arrived at the house, it was open. In his words, Helgi took the camera and some films. I think they were small cassettes. Manfred took a firearm, but then threw it into the Santa Clara dam. In addition to confirming the burglary at Christian's house, this testimony adds facts concealed by Helgi at the time of his statements to the Metropolitan Police on 2nd of February 2018. Helgi stole one of the cars that was parked outside the house, as well as the respective documents. According to his words, Helgi also took the car. I think he was an old junker, a Ford or something. He also took the papers. Helgi sold the car in Santa Clara. Back in Santa Clara, after the robbery, Helgi showed him the footage he was watching on the video camera and said, look. It was then that he saw a woman who spoke Italian. She was shouting, "Aiuto," and just moaning. The woman was lying on the table. She must have been tied up because she could not defend herself. The assailant shook her breast with a ruler pervert. She had to suck him off. I saw it was Oberkellner. I recognized him by his face. At some point, I hung up. That was enough for me, and I saw no more. As Manfred's statements do not coincide with what LG claims to have seen, he is asked about another object used by Christian B. Recall that Helgi speaks of a whip different from a ruler. Manfred's answer is clear, only the ruler. It is at this point in the interrogation that there is a pause. It's written that the witness took the opportunity to have a cigarette and a coffee, and is not known what the policeman in charge did. What is certain is that once the interrogation has resumed, the key question is asked. How old do you think the woman in the video is? Manfred answers, about 40 years old, maybe a little older. Doubts seem to have set in for the interrogator, and Manfred is asked what Helgi had yet to ask. Can you describe the room where Christian and the woman were? Manfred quickly replies, in his house. The interrogator wants further clarification to dispel his doubts. How did you find out? Manfred's answer is convincing, because all of Oberkellner's things were scattered. Electrical appliances were piled up everywhere. I know his house. The witness clarifies that as he also consumes porn films, he was not affected by what he saw and makes a revelation of a fact deliberately concealed by Helgi. Helgi showed the video in a bar in Santa Clara, located on the outskirts of the village. At the time, the bar belonged to a German Reiki practitioner. In addition to this recording, Manfred claims to have also visualized a girl, maybe 14 years old, who spoke German and said, "This is RAPE." She was tied to the beam in the living room of Christian's house while he put his thing in her mouth. The girl vomited and he said, "Now you are dirtying my carpet." Manfred confirms Helgi's version as to the possible origin of this girl, stating that it occurred to him that she could be one of the girls from a social institution located somewhere in the Algarve. Asked whether Christian was masked on the tapes he saw, he said, "I don't remember." As to the fate of the videotapes with the recordings, Manfred clarified that at some point, Helgi sold his motorhome to Cheyenne of the Rebel Farm, located in Santa Clara. His assumption is that the videotapes were in the motorhome. Manfred describes Christian as a psychopath with a very good exterior but a degenerate interior. The last time he saw him was at the Dragon Festival, a music festival in Orgiva, in a year he doesn't remember. But when he got out of prison 2 weeks later, he returned to Organiva to transport 6 kilos of hashish to Germany, and she hasn't seen him since. It was then that she met Helgi. This witness explained that he didn't contact the police after seeing the videotape stolen from Christian's house because it was not his business to denigrate other people to the police, an attitude befitting a true partner in crime. As for the revelations made by Christian at the Tergiva festival in February or March 2008, which led Helgi to contact the police, Manfred was not asked any questions. This revelation is said to have been made in the presence of Manfred and Michael, but it seems incredible that Manfred is not asked anything about this matter. It's as if the investigators are not interested in listening to any of the other participants in this conversation, as if Helgi's statement is enough to be used as proof of something, even if it's a lie. This attitude of the German investigators is not compatible with serious, objective, and honest work in the search for the material truth that is required of any criminal investigator. Manfred is said to have spoken about Helgi's motivations, his interest in being rewarded, and lying in relation to the Madeleine Mccann case, but there is no reference to the case in the interrogation. The German and British police, when it comes to Madeleine Mccann, are only interested in what the manipulative Helgi says. After reading the statements of Manfred, we understand why Helgi was not interested in the investigators talking to him. Helgi concealed facts relevant for the assessment of the credibility of his statement and certainly feared to be contradicted by the other accomplices as to the version of Christian's confession about his responsibility for the disappearance of the British girl. It's necessary to make a comparative analysis between Helgi and Manfred. There are many contradictions between their statements. In statements made on 15th of August 2020, already after the start of the advertising and propaganda campaign developed by the consortium Grange, Rechen and Associados in the port of Ancona, Italy, Manfred stated that when he traveled to Portugal together with Michael, it was initially only a change of location. The idea to steal fuel and solar panels came later. Michael distanced himself from him because of Christian. They started to make money on a large scale by stealing fuel and solar panels. At that time, he stayed at Christian's house for more than 3 weeks. In Greece, Helgi was involved in human trafficking. At one point, he was arrested for holding 3 African immigrants to smuggle them from Igoumenitsa to Italy. This was not philanthropy. Helgi accepted money for the job. The story told by Helgi to the British police is a pretty stupid excuse. It was not hitchhiking, but an act of trafficking. Manfred stated that Helgi received a relatively long prison sentence for it. I think it was 7 years, if I remember correctly. However, he came back after a short period of time, I think almost 2 years. Helgi was apparently not sincere about his early release, as he told Manfred that he was not on the run, but that he had to report to the police every week. However, the police didn't seem to know of any obligation to report. After his release from prison in Greece, Helgi lived with Manfred for 4 months. He didn't work, he was just lazy. It was at that time that Helgi reportedly confided to Manfred that he was going to be questioned in Athens by the British police about the Maddie case and that he had become a very important person. He had the idea that he was going to receive a big reward. From Christian's house, he and Helgi took only a video camera with 2 or 3 cassettes. What he said about all the electronic devices, computers and the like, scattered around Christian's house is a misunderstanding. When the house was broken into, the door was open. There was no valuable electronic devices, except for the camera, which was on the floor of the living room with the beam, the wooden boot, and not in the bedroom wardrobe, as Helgi claimed. It's not true that 2 Sony video cameras were stolen. To Helgi, Manfred said, that is not true. There was only one camera, and it was on the living room floor. Manfred thought that the police searched the house because when he lived there, the house was tidy and clean. He stole a firearm as well as 20 liters of fuel. There was nothing else. Someone had to be there first because the bigger fuel cans were all empty. Helgi stole a Ford or Opel Ascona wagon or something like that, definitely a van, white or beige. When asked about Helgi's claim that some 200 to 300 liters of fuel were stolen from a tank at the back of the house, Manfred replies, that is absolutely untrue. How could he have transported that amount of fuel? If I had known, I would have taken the battery. The person who first saw the video was Helgi. Manfred watched the video at the request of the former through the small screen of the camera. He believes that Uwe, a German citizen, must have seen the video. Uwe was living in Rebel Farm at the time and was with them in the German bar where the owner saw the video. However, he claims that he never saw the video on any screen other than the screen of the video camera, not least because they didn't have a TV at the time. When asked what details he saw in the video, he said, there was a woman. I recently read how old she must have been. I didn't think she was that old. From memory, I would say she was 40 to 45 years old. She was on the table. The woman was lying on her back. The assailant shook the woman's breasts with a ruler. The woman even said aiuto, which means help in Italian. The woman didn't speak English, contrary to what Helgi claimed. Manfred clarified this point as follows. When we saw the video, I said to Helgi, that's Italian, after which Helgi made no comment. Later in court, he reportedly said that it was English. At that time, Helgi didn't speak Italian either. For Manfred, contrary to Helgi's assertion, the scene of the woman was only filmed in Christian's house in one single perspective, with the camera fixed. When asked whether he had seen in Christian B's house any of the diving goggles that were said to have been painted on, he replied, no, I have not seen any diving goggles. During the entire time I lived in Christian's house, over a period of approximately 3 weeks to a month, I never saw any diving goggles. He further clarified that the woman in the video was not wearing diving goggles. No, I'm sure that the woman in the video was not wearing diving goggles. As for the man, Christian, he says he was not wearing a mask. No, the person was not masked. He was not wearing a mask. Contrary to what Helgi mentioned, the man was neither masked nor sitting on a bed at the end of the video, at which point he would have removed his mask. At that moment, they recognized Christian B. In the words of Manfred, Helgi's lie is exposed. No, that's not true, unless he later put on a mask and took it off again. When it is said that the woman Helgi claims to have seen in the video must have been about 70 to 75 years old and a bit fat, Manfred replies, "Yes, a bit fat, that's right. She had a bit of flesh on her, but she wasn't that old. She wasn't that old. The woman was still in my price range. At first I thought it was human. I didn't think it was that bad." Manfred also claimed that it was untrue that the camera used to film the scene with the young woman was hanging from a high point. In both cases, nobody has their hand on the camera to film, but the camera was fixed. Manfred was clear in denying Helgi regarding Christian's relationship with Nicole from the children's institution in Sao Bartolomeo de Messines. It's a lie that Christian received children in exchange for stolen household utensils, such as refrigerators. I only told Helgi that Christian took a fridge to the institution and that this was not related to child abuse. As to the fate of the video camera and tapes, Helgi told Manfred that he sold the videotape to Cheyenne, Rebel Farm, with his motorhome. The bar where the video was viewed is described by Manfred as follows. A German man ran the bar. The bar is not far from Santa Clara. The old woman who ran the bar was an ecological aunt. A damaged hippie on a macrobiotic diet who fell in love with Uwe also did Reiki massages. The woman who ran the bar was very interested in Reiki. About the meeting with Christian at the Kite Festival in March 2008 in Orgiva, Spain, Manfred said that I was there with Helgi. Christian ran past us with his girlfriend, looked at us, but didn't talk to anyone. Manfred is quite enlightening. Christian did not speak to him, nor to Michael, nor even to Helgi. There were no confidences from Christian about his relation to the disappearance of Madeleine Mccann. 2 weeks after Christian B's stay at the Organiva festival, he learned from Helgi that he had gone there to buy 5 kilos of hashish. Manfred claims that he never saw animal pornography in Christian's house, that there were no video cassettes with titles that would allow conclusions to be drawn about animal pornography. As he himself said, I didn't see anything like that. I've read something like that on the internet. Such things aren't good. Even during the time I lived with Christian, I never saw those videos, and he never noticed any abnormal sexual inclination on Christian's part. The statements of Manfred leave no room for doubt. His accomplice is a manipulator and liar, but the consortium, Grange, Reckon, and Associates continues to protect and spread the lies of Helgi. This is the only way they can have a suspect in the kidnapping of Madeleine Mccann. Chapter number 30. Okay, this is the last chapter I'm going to read for today. The Drug Addict Friend. A review of the various documents of the German investigation relating to 2018, the year in which Christian B became a suspect in the crime of RAPE of a 70-year-old woman and SA of a child. These events allegedly took place in Portugal before his arrest, and that of Michael T., which took place in April 2006. Despite several references to the latter, it's known that at the time he lived in the same house as Christian. I know that he was not questioned in these proceedings. The interrogation of the said individual, if any, will be subsequent to this investigation. I therefore refer to what has appeared in the press about this individual of Austrian nationality with a criminal record for theft, addicted to drugs and alcohol, who, after his release from prison in December 2006, went to live in Orgiva. Some consider him to be Christian's best friend, but this is not proven. Michael does not give details or proof of what he claims, saying, I know he did it. With this sentence, he refers to the possible responsibilities of Christian in the disappearance of Madeleine Mccann. According to this person, Christian was a pervert and more than capable of abducting the child for sexual purposes or for money. What he says seems to be opinions based on probabilities. Look at this sentence. I think he probably sold Maddie to someone, maybe to a sex ring. I was living with him at the time. Note that Helgi stated that Michael went to live in Orgiva after his release from prison in December 2006, so that by May 2007, he will no longer be at Christian's house. The statements to the media follow a predefined pattern. Phrases are said that turn Christian into a monster. No evidence is provided for what is said, and lies are told. One has to follow the wave of abduction by a PDF. According to Michael, Christian boasted that he had robbed holiday flats of rich tourists and that in his house there was a secret place where he kept the things he stole. But both Helgi and Manfred claimed that the objects stolen by Christian were scattered around the house in plain view and that no one could get to the secret compartment. What Michael told the press, or rather what he didn't say, is important and devalues the statement of Helgi. For example, he doesn't mention the meeting between the four of them, which may have taken place at the Organiva Festival in 2008, where, according to Helgi, Christian revealed to them his involvement in the abduction of Madeleine Mccann. This is another fact that leads us to doubt Helgi's claims. None of those present at that meeting thought he was capable of abducting a child for sex or money. What he says seems to be opinions based on probabilities. Look at this sentence. I think that I read this already. Did I? Yeah, with the secret compartment thing. What Michael told the press, or rather what he didn't say, is important and devalues the statement of Helgi. Even this is repeating itself. Yes. This is another fact that leads us to doubt Helgi. None of those present at the meeting mentions Christian's revelation, nor are they asked about it, neither by the journalists, nor above all by the police officers. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop here. And I need to write this somewhere so I don't forget where I'm at. Where should I write this? Okay, chapter 31. Because each time before I go live, I have to double check my previous live to see which chapter I was at. Okay, chapter 31. Hey, my pen is not writing anymore. Everything is working so horrible this week, for God's sake. Okay, chapter 31. Chapter 31, carrying on next week. Okay, guys, so thank you so much for staying with, what did I say? Oh my God. I was gonna say thank you so much for staying with me. Although I started late, I apologize for that. Yes, JD, I will be live next Friday. I'm hoping it's going to be 10 o'clock in the evening. I'm hoping. Yeah, I should be okay for 10 next Friday. And next Friday is going to be the last live of reading Goncalo Amaral's book. So, yeah. Thanks, guys, and take care. Have a good night. And I'll see you next Friday. Bye, everyone.